Welcome to the world of Adobe Illustrator. I am your host, Allie Lehman. I cannot tell you every different way that you can use Illustrator, but we are going to use it for one purpose today, and that is to create something that is promotional. And this will actually be the first of a few videos where I'm designing something that is for a fake. We're going to basically just make something up. I actually really like teaching on the fly, not because I don't like to prepare, but because I think there's a lot of value in seeing someone problem solve for real in front of you. So Illustrator is going to be the first place that we're going to make a design, and then I'm actually going to make that same design in Photoshop, InDesign, and Canva. Canva is free. All of these Adobe programs are paid. You can have a subscription or find someone with an old version on a CD, which I don't even think CDs can be loaded on most computers anymore, but we're going to start with Illustrator. So I have Illustrator open right now. As you can see, all of my old files that I've made show up as recent files, and I'm going to just create a new document right now by clicking Create New, and it's going to load this dialog window, which gosh, it's kind of slow, but that's fine. And I'm going to just choose a 8.5 by 11. Actually, I want it to be portrait. So it's going to be 8.5 wide by 11 inches tall. And we're just going to create a promotional poster. So something that you can print off at home. Seems pretty relevant and easy. Here you can choose how many artboards you want, which basically just means how many different exportable or exportable artboards that you could maybe have a multi-page document, but we're just going to do one. And I'm actually going to choose CMYK color because CMYK is for print and RGB is for digital. And so because maybe I think that we're going to print this, I'd rather just start it off with CMYK than have to convert it later. So I'm going to call this Diamond Membership. And I'm going to create that artboard. So as you can see, the 8.5 by 11 document is here. Just because I named this document doesn't mean I've saved it. And so I'm actually going to go Save As. And I'm going to load it into my desktop. Why not? Click Save, hit OK. And here I have my board. What I'm on my trackpad right now, I can kind of rotate it around. Anything that's off of this white area will not be technically a part of the document. And so I can zoom in and out and see the entire thing. I like being able to see the whole artboard. But if down here you want to do like fit on screen, here I'm seeing it basically the max height. So everyone's Illustrator will look different because there's different workspaces that you can have. Right now I'm on Essentials, but I have different panes or windows that are settings that appear that other people might not have active. They're all going to be there. You just have to kind of activate them. So what I'm going to do first is drag in my mood board from the mood board video that I made. I just literally took it, dragged it into my Illustrator board. While holding Shift, I'm going to just drag it down so that it's smaller. I don't need it that big. And I'm going to just keep it off of my artboard right there. But I do want to keep it handy for when I'm making something. And so what we're going to do is I'm actually going to create a flyer for learning how to design. So let's say I want to promote this class or this online class or this portion of this class and actually create a flyer to talk about what I'm teaching. So this is how I would actually do it. Down here we have our colors. This is basically the fill text. This is the stroke, and I'm going to get rid of the stroke because I don't need it. And what I do usually, and you're going to just see me walk through how I would do design, is I'm going to start typing out any words that I want. So I'm going to take the eyedropper and I'm going to take this red color. And so you can see if I click into it, it turns my fill color red. And I'm going to write Learn how to design. That's a loaded title. And because I'm zoomed out, you really can get a sense of what this would feel like if you were holding a piece of paper, you know, farther away. So if you're holding a piece of paper, you're not zoomed into this element, reading it. You're kind of looking at it as a whole. So I don't mind being zoomed out right now. And I'm going to increase the font size, which is over here in my character panel. If you don't see a character panel after engaging in the text box tool, you can actually go to Window and under Type, choose Character. But I already have that up. I'm going to change the text right here to be 60. See, Creative Cloud. I have 8 updates. And then just shoot that off my screen. And I'm going to stack it. So learn how to design like this. The thing that I'm always seeing in amateur design is the text is so close to the edge. And I personally feel like having a little bit more breathing room will make something feel a little bit more professional. Same with the width of the column of text. If you don't fill up the whole area, it just feels a little bit more like it can breathe, and there's not so much pressure to fit everything in. It feels a little bit more thought out. So now that I have it stacked like this, I'm going to click it. And the great thing I love about Illustrator is you can highlight the text to change things, but you can also just choose the entire text box. That's not so true of Photoshop and InDesign all the time. So I do like designing in Illustrator for little reasons like that. And so what I'm going to do is choose, I'm going to start looking at fonts. And so the great thing about it is it gives you a little bit of a preview by the word sample. And I'm going to think through, I'm going to look at what these fonts look like. And so like I mentioned in my mood board video, I'm very much choosing via my mood board a lot of sans serif fonts, which the difference is, I'll show you. This is a serif font, so let's move in. It basically has these little, I don't know how to call it beyond a serif, but it has these little notches that come out. Whereas if I were to just highlight the word how and turn it into a sans serif, you don't have those little hooks coming off of the word. And so I'm going to choose a sans serif font that I feel like has, feels a little bit more modern, a little bit more bold, like a lot of the things that we're seeing. And we're going to just start playing around with how we want to lay this out. And so I'm going to click this like before. And I'm going to down here just make it all caps. You can see that really changes a lot. There's a lot of times that I talk to people, they feel like all caps feels a little bit like you're yelling. I think in the right context it can feel nice and clean. And so another way to really elevate your text or your type is playing around with the spacing between the lines and the letters. And so here you have the leading, which if I start bringing this number down, it's going to move the text closer together, the words closer together. If I were to highlight or select that box, I can also play around with the spacing between each letter horizontally. And so it feels a lot different when you start spacing things out, and it feels a little bit more custom. And so you can see that if you start playing around with the actual spacing between the letters, things start to just feel a little less out of the box. Here I feel like it starts to become difficult to read if there's too much space. So I'm going to just undo twice. And I'm going to highlight. Again, you don't have to highlight in Illustrator, but I'm going to choose that red color. And there's a lot of times that I see people love color in a mood board, but it just comes off a little bit differently when you finally implement it. And so I'm going to take a square rectangle tool that allows me to create blocks of text. And I'm going to just play around with choosing a color from our mood board. Actually, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to choose the color first. And a lot of times I will just really closely mimic a design just to get a sense of, get a really good starting point. And I think it's especially helpful if you're a beginning designer. Beginner designer. And then I'm going to just lay this block down. You can see that it appears naturally on top of that text. You can move that to the back in a few different ways. You can take object. Oh, actually, I use shortcuts so much that I don't really know. I think it's arrange. Yep, send to back. The shortcut for me is Command-Shift bracket. And then you start getting a sense of where this design is going. And so this changes a lot and drastically if you choose this green color, which is difficult to read on top of something like that. You start changing things if it's this green color. You go a little bit brighter green, you go blue. This feels very like baby color scheme to me. And I actually really liked this color, so I'm going to leave it like that. And we start picking up other elements that we find present here. And so what I would probably do is pair two different fonts. We have a sans serif font that's happening right here. Learn how to design. And I'm going to write, it's going to kind of default that same font. I'm going to say using Canva, Illustrator, InDesign, and Photoshop. The text box was too small, so if you just drag this down, you'll see where everything is. But I'm going to take the font size down. And if you're getting a ton of words being split, you can just select that, go to paragraph, which again, you can always find the different window panes here. So paragraph right now, and uncheck the hyphenate button right here. But I'm going to go back to character, and I'm going to pair this sans serif font with one that is a serif font, because you actually don't need to just choose one. You can really combine two different fonts, and they still feel very balanced. And so what I'm doing is I'm just sort of playing around. I think the thing that's throwing me off right now is the fact that I'm seeing this in all caps. So I'm going to bring it down to lowercase. And even though I don't have a lot of serif fonts in my mood board, I still can choose something that feels clean and a little bit more modern. This Museo 30 font feels pretty modern. And I'm going to bring the spacing between the letters down. It feels a little too much space in between. And I'm going to actually write Adobe. We can uppercase the actual programs. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Actually don't know if InDesign is spelled that way. We're just going to go with it. And here you can start playing around with these colors again. So maybe in a smaller sense, these red colors feel a little bit better as smaller, less prominent places. And so let's just leave it like this for now. Let's start to pick out other things that seem like they show up in here, in our mood board. I'm going to identify some elements that I want to emulate, and we're going to do it. So down here at the bottom in this gray, not gray, sorry, grayish green, we're going to create some sort of circular element that feels more like a stamp. So let's do that. Going to choose a gray color, and then I'm going to swap the fill and the stroke. So now if I create a shape, it's going to just show me the stroke color and not necessarily the fill. So while holding shift, because I don't want an oval, shift will keep it a perfect circle. And I'm going to place it up here. Make it a little bit smaller. And let's see. For the purposes of just showing you something, I'm going to show you how I would create that space in between the circle so that it's not split, or not, it is split, but it still feels like a circle. And there's two different ways. So I'm going to show you the first way that's easy. If it was right here and it's hugging this line of pink and white, there's two ways. You can just click this pink box and choose the rectangle and just kind of fake it, you know? You're going to just create this rectangle and it looks like it's split like that. Maybe you do the same thing with the white. And what I'm doing is I'm just double clicking this element that allows me to do that. As I was doing that, I realized it's a lot easier if when you click, you hold Option until you see those two little arrows, and you're gonna just pick the white. And so you've made this circle feel like it's split, even though it isn't. If you'd like to know exactly how to actually split it, there's a couple different steps. The first way is you need to select the circle, go to Object, Expand. This changes this shape from a circle with a stroke outline that can get increased from, thin to thick, to it just being a shape. And the shape is, there's no more outline, it's just filled in with this gray as a shape. The difference is this one has the stroke color of gray down here, you can see. This has the fill color. And so with this fill color, I could add an outline. And it would be the gray is in the middle as the fill and the outline is red, but I don't want that. So I'm just hitting undo a few times. Then you're going to create another shape like we did before, and we're going to overlay on top. I'm going to thicken it a little bit, maybe even a bit more. You can choose both shapes by hitting Shift Select so that both are selected. And under the Align tool, you're gonna align this way, and then you're going to open up your Pathfinder tool, which again, you can always pull up the different panels that I'm talking about by clicking Window. And you're going to knock out, it's basically minus front. You're taking whatever shape is in the front and knocking it out through the back. So you're going to select both and knock that out just like that. This is the preference because before this hack job, selected the wrong thing. Before, all you're doing is you're faking it so that when you get it up here, you can see that white strip, which we don't want. So I'm going to select all of these and delete it. And here, because we knocked it out, this truly can go on top of any color. So what I'm going to do is leave this right here. And, design is much more than just learning how to mimic other designs. It's figuring out how to solve a problem and how to communicate well. But I really just want to be helpful in thinking through how to use this tool. And so I always like to just copy and paste, basically copy elements. I don't need to create a whole new one. And I'm going to say for all levels. But I'm not going to leave it large like this. I'm going to take the character pane like this, bring it down to, let's just say 15. You can also type in your spacing if you want. I'm going to center this up, bring my text box in a little bit. It doesn't need to be this big. And then I'm going to just place this inside. If you want to make sure that it's very much leveled up, again, these text boxes are getting in my way, so I'm going to just bring them in closer so I don't keep selecting them. Going to highlight both of these, and again, I'm going to just center this up to make sure that we're all centered horizontally and honestly to the eye as well. Sometimes things can be technically centered, but that just feels a little weird. So I have no problem doing that. This will say for all levels, and so I'm going to highlight that circle, and I'm going to choose this green color, or no, actually I'm going to choose this blue color because I really like it. And same for this text. So right now it's that green. I'm going to change it to blue. And to really dress it up, you know, this is where you can start getting creative. You can choose to make an exclamation point, and I'm actually going to make it this font and this color. And I'm going to just increase the size. And I'm going to choose this pink. And this is where I start playing around with layering. So you can have a lot of different layers happening within a design that really makes it feel more custom. I'm going to just place it right here where it feels a little centered. Send to back, again, you can go to Object, Arrange, Send Backward, or Send to Back. And start playing around with what feels right. So actually I think it would be even cooler if this was smaller. For all levels, this starts to feel a little weird. Maybe if it was even bigger and just took up a little bit more room. I like how it's kind of overlapped on all of the different elements here. You might decide that you like this pink as well. I'm going to just place it down here until we decide how to get everything together. So another thing that we might do is, let's say you really like this 2016 element down here. And what I would probably do is, you know, start playing around with turning that text instead of fill into outline and increase the size. So there's a couple of different ways you can increase the size. You can just hit the E key, which really helps you expand the entire size of this design, or you can increase the font size. There's just a ton of different ways. Again, I want it to be intersecting really in an interesting way, that pink. And the pink is starting to feel a little too heavy. Like, I want it to be lighter. So what I might do is start playing around with, like, if I like this purple color, if I like gray, there's this kind of yellowish, yeah, it's kind of like a yellow color right here, yellowish green. And maybe I'm going to intersect the word design so that it comes down further. And I'm starting to like that a lot. The cool thing is if you wanted to start doing some of these offset type elements here, there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. The first would be to completely copy this section so that you have two. And you can start doing some things that are really interesting. So I just copied this L, or you can like cut it. I'm going to delete this, and then I'm going to paste that L in again. But I'm going to turn this back into the fill. And then I'm going to take the pink that we had originally and start figuring out, is there a way that we can overlap? Again, if I do Object, Send Backwards, and I keep doing that, and that's just Command bracket, you can start playing around with having things just sort of off center, feel a little bit more interesting. I'm actually going to take this this brownish orange color, and I'm going to just create an O or a circle, and again Command Shift until it's behind. And that's where you start learning, like, is that distracting? I kind of feel like it's weird. I almost would rather have it centered up inside. And then, or maybe you decide that you want to, let's try this, create a circle and cut it in half. The easiest way that I would say to do that is create a rectangle. Drag this down like here. These are two different shapes. Sometimes when I'm working with two different shapes, I like them to be two different colors. Shift, select the circle, and then with my Pathfinder, break it in half. I'm going to bring the size back down. And I think what I'm dealing with right now is just feeling like this color is too dark. And so I'm going to move to the back and then pick up a different color. So I'm going to pick up this bright green color like this. And I'm going to just keep on working that until it feels more balanced. And again, it's just coming from seeing this 2016 down at the bottom middle square. Let's pull another color. And again, you don't have to just keep pulling colors from your mood board. You can for sure start taking ownership of the color scheme and making decisions that feel normal. With this rectangle, I'm going to actually go like this and just kind of intersect that H. Command bracket brings it to the back. And you know, you have to decide, like, do you want each letter to have sort of this crazy element happening? Or could you perhaps, let's see, let's take this purpley pink color down here and actually create some sort of just overlapping element that sort of takes on that entire area. You might decide that that feels way too bulky. I'm going to bring this text down to give this a little bit of breathing room. And the great thing about Illustrator, and this is why people, me included, use it to create logos, is you can start getting really creative with the shapes. I felt like that was a little too heavy. And so I'm actually going to, what's happening is because this shape is behind the text, I can't necessarily grab it really easily. And so it just takes a little finagling and moving some stuff around. But I'm going to go ahead and do this, and then I'm going to just flip it. So I'm going to kind of drag it and rotate it around so that I can still use that O, and I don't have to really reinvent the wheel. I'm going to take this S, because I think an S is interesting. I'm going to copy and paste it and do sort of the same thing that I'm doing with this pink. And so you see here I have this S just kind of coming off and getting outside of those lines, which I really like. Let's do two more. I'm going to take this yellow. I'm going to rotate it again, just sort of like when you see that little rotated arrow come up. I'm going to go down. And so really we're just sort of sticking to like 3 different colors and shapes. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel every single letter, and I don't need every letter to have it. So because I did the N up here, I'm going to do the N down here. And then to really just like make it a little bit interesting, I'm going to take this blue and just place random dots around so that it just feels like there's a little bit of those elements that are, you know, they don't have to be necessarily have to do with the letters, but they can just feel like they're balancing everything so that, you know, it doesn't get too boring. And here I like it. So really we're working with 2 to 3 letters that are getting intersected by these shapes of colors with these little blue pops of color. I have this element right here that's like for all levels, which I like keeping down here almost like a stamp. I'm going to bring this back up because I feel like before when there was that big block of pink, it felt like a little too much. And then what I would probably do with the rest of this is, you know, add in some more specific information. So because these are all still letters, or they're editable text, I'm going to bring the character size down quite a bit. I'm aiming for just about the same height as this section. Not necessarily has to be smaller in size or not, but just by, by your, visual eye. And then I'm going to say Saturday, April 16th from 1:30 to 4:30 p.m. You can start getting specific with maybe you like superscript for it to feel like, whatever floats your boat. I'm going to bring the size down even more. And what else? Maybe bring this down a little bit just to frame it up with this element. And then I'm going to have just a separator. So I'm going to pull this yellow bar down and separate this section from the bottom part. Sometimes when I drag, I end up like just dragging everything with me. You just have to make sure you're dragging to select and not just like moving things around. So then I think through, are there any colors that I feel like were missing that I liked from the beginning? And I start messing around with just making sure that I like everything. It doesn't feel too heavy. And really, honestly, I think what I think I would do is make it red, but not as thick as what I was originally thinking. And I like that it's connected to that using Canva, Adobe Illustrator, InDesign, and Photoshop. So you can see this is definitely a style. Like, it's not something that I feel like I went into planning to create. I still want this a little thinner. I really am using my mood board 100%. I'm not making something that feels like I copied one specific element, which is what I'm always trying to achieve. I'm never trying to make it feel like I took a design from someone and just made it my own. I'm using all of the different elements that appear and distributing it evenly so that it feels like mine. It was my interpretation. I actually might I'm going to select these 3 elements and just make sure they're aligned this way. What I might end up doing, because we have a little bit of organic shape happening here, like down at the bottom in this tote, I'm going to show you how I would make an element feel, oop, my battery's going to fall asleep soon or die. But I would just, how I would make really organic shape would be to take the pen tool right here and you start, basically you take an anchor spot, which I clicked and released, and then I'm going to take another anchor spot and just really drag until I like the shape that's forming. I'm going to click the anchor text right here. I'm not clicked on anything. I'm going to make it evolve a little bit this way. And what I'm doing is just creating sort of this weird organic shape that I don't even know if I'll like ultimately. And then I'm hitting shift and I'm basically just clicking these corners until I end that shape. From here, you can start playing around with the different angles. So I can start, pulling things out, making them a little bit more dramatic. Maybe going like this so that there's no harsh edges. And then I'm actually going to delete that square that was back behind here. And I'm going to go like this. So here you can see there's kind of a weird element happening right here that just doesn't feel as smooth or fluid. And the cool thing about it is you can just basically shift all of the different angles to feel appropriate or to feel like, very organic. And I'm just playing around with that. You can actually select with this white tool, which is the direct selection tool. We can shift all of these over. And again, we're getting this weird angle that I just want to correct basically this way. you know, maybe that feels too weird. Just making it feel a little bit more organic in the shape. And what I might do is maybe I want it to really intersect down here. And maybe I want it to be a little bit lighter. So instead of pink, I'm going to double click. Well, actually, let me try this color. Nah. Gray, no. Nope. I'm going to bring it up a little lighter. Just like that. And maybe I don't like it up at the top. Maybe I want it to be, I'm going to completely switch it around so that it's down here. And then bring it up. And I don't love how it's isolating the U and using. So I'm going to bring it up like this. Again, you end up getting these weird angles if you aren't careful. And then I'm going to bring this down. And this is where I can get really intentional with how it intersects my design. But I really like this. I think it's weird. It would catch someone's eye. You know, I knew that it wasn't something that I just like know automatically or knew exactly what I was doing. Again, I kind of want this even more intersected. And this is where you see me actually playing around with it, not being content with it, but then at the same time knowing that it doesn't really matter. No one else is going to be as critical as I am unless they're judging my work or, you know, they're a designer themselves, which I take criticism very well, so go ahead. And yeah, just figuring out if you really like the way that this is looking, if this is something that you can own, if there's like, if it feels too random. You might be watching it like, I really like the way that the straight line looked before you did this, which is totally cool. If you really wanted for this for all levels to pop, we could just put a white circle behind here. Just like that. I can't tell if it's perfectly centered. I don't think so. Maybe like that. This color still is kind of weird to me, so I'm going to take all the gray out of it. I want it to be a little brighter than that. Maybe not. Maybe it's good. We'll just say it's good. I kind of want this to not be so like left aligned, so I'm going to just pull some of that over. Sometimes I'll even say like, what does it look like to not have everything lined up perfectly? And I don't hate it. And this is where I think that's why pushing your concept forward and keep going with it only helps. I'm going to overlap this. Again, there's just something distracting about how thick this red line is, so I'm going to thin it out even more. And then let's just bring, I'm going to select until you see the double arrows. I'm going to just bring down another circle. Just a random dot. And anytime I move something around, I think you can just undo at any time. And to make this little for all levels, you can do Command G and it will group everything. So the next time I select it, it will be everything. And I might just kind of rotate it so that it feels more like a stamp and less like a perfect circle design. So I'm going to call it good. Again, I'm the kind of designer that might come back to this later and think, there's a lot of improvements that I can make, or I'm going to try to make this better. But for the most part, I go with it, I run with it, and I want things to be, I'm always thinking of the purpose. The purpose is just to get people's attention, and I want it to be quick. And so here we have our mood board, our final design. I'm going to save as. Here you can save it as an AI file or an EPS, PDF. I'll save it as a PDF, why not? You can save export as a JPEG. So here I saved the PDF, but then I can also export as. And I can choose JPEG, PNG, save both, why not? And then you have your designs. Everything that stays within your Illustrator file will be editable unless you convert something to an outline via expanding it like I showed you. Once I hit this expand and click OK, I can't edit this anymore because these fonts just become shapes, essentially. I'm going to click undo though because I like keeping things editable if possible. I'd rather save as a new file and make things not editable and always have the two options. So if you watch this and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to learn Illustrator, I'm going to teach you how to make this exact same design in Canva as closely as I can, which is a free design tool. And hopefully this was helpful.